How are you?
How's it going?
Very good.
It's nice to meet you. I'm Dara, by the way, and this is Owen.
Owen. Yeah, actually, I saw the spelling of your name and I thought, how do I say that?
Yeah.
One of the doctors at work who's from Ireland, he was like, oh, yeah, it's Owen. I'm like, I can't say that.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a problem with it. There's too many vowels in it. Dara gives people a lot of problems as well. You get
Yeah.
Dairy. Yeah.
Dairy, yeah. Like as in cow's milk tends to be the most common one.
Are you finished work? Are you going to work, or what's the story, Ivan?
No, I finished my night shift this morning. So I woke up at like 2 or 3 p.m. and got the session in, uploaded the video, and here I am now.
And so do you do day by day? So like Wednesday's video goes up on Wednesday, or do you tend to hold back?
Exactly. Yeah. I pretty much upload it right away, man. Like as soon as I finish the session, I just sit down and do a voiceover real quick. The videos are really raw, so there's nothing to it. Like there's no editing, there's nothing. So I just do a voiceover and just upload it right away, man. That's pretty much what I do.
And when did the you wanting the video sessions and put them up, when did that start?
Oh man. So I've had the channel for probably pushing 2 years now. And I started kind of recording myself just to see like how I could improve the lift. And then I thought, how am I gonna like make a library out of all these, videos? Where can I put them on? At the time, my computer wasn't all that good, so I just thought, let me just start a YouTube channel, and no one's gonna watch it anyway. I might as well just put it up on there. That's kind of how it started, like a library thing.
Do you? All right. Before we go further, we better welcome Ivan to the podcast. So thanks for taking time to get on as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're a bit of different. Ivan, do you want to like give people a quick rundown of like who you are? I suppose just like a really like quick like few sentence synopsis, just in case.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm Ivan Djuric, 32. I work as a nurse in an emergency department. I've been basically lifting weights probably seriously for 7 years now. Before that, I was, into basketball. So all of my stuff was revolving around that. Around 21, 22, gave basketball up. I just thought I wasn't going to make the NBA or professional basketball. So I kind of gave that up, focused on my studies. And then at 25, picked up powerlifting, started reading texts about powerlifting, starting strength and all that stuff. And here I am 7 years on, still kind of working it out and figuring it all out.
Nice.
That's me. Oh, and in terms of lifts, 205 back squat is my best squat. Front squat is 170, deadlift 230. Basically, those 3 lifts are the only ones I really care about. The bench press is also 140, but that's kind of fallen off to the side now that I'm just fully focused on the squat. But that's me in a nutshell.
I have a couple of questions that I wanted to get to, but my first one is, what's the deal with the poppy? What's that about? The amount of comments on YouTube, the poppy thing. And we were like, is it a poppy?
A colleague at work.
Yeah.
A colleague at work actually asked me, he's a 60-year-old dude, and he said to me, what's with this stuff? You're selling a t-shirt that says I'm feeling poppy. What the hell is that? So I basically gave him the explanation that I'm going to give you guys. So basically, I was talking to him in one of the videos, and I was saying how I was feeling really good on that particular day. And I said, like, I'm feeling poppy. Like, I feel like I'm just popping out of the bottom. And one of the fellas just basically commented, the poppy king, here comes poppy. And then he just kind of took on it. The momentum kind of took it from there.
Because we weren't sure, was it a poppy, was it the plant or something? And then we were wondering, were people calling you, because people do this on the internet, if you see like Clarence's videos, they call him like daddy and stuff. So we're like, are they calling Ivan Poppy? Like We were, and I hadn't come across it in your videos, but I was like, what the fuck is that from? But that's really interesting. I have another question as well. What's the deal with the basketball jerseys as well? What's the...
Yeah, man. So when I was growing up, man, basketball is everything, man. Like my dream was to play in the NBA. So, one by one, I started buying these NBA tops, and like, you'd have pickup games. I'd wear one of the tops and whatever. First started off with my favorite player. And then like after, 4, 5, 6 years, I basically ended up having like 15 jerseys. And then family happened, and really, it's not really suitable to kind of wear these extra large tops around the place anymore. So for 5, 6 years, man, I didn't wear them at all. And then, me and my mates were talking about, should we just sell them on Gumtree or Facebook? They just sell them. Like, what's the point? They're just, using up space. And then I thought, why don't I wear them in the videos? And I think that was around January when my channel started kind of getting a bit more momentum. And I thought, well, now that people are watching it, might as well just, instead of having the same old t-shirt, let's get these out of the cupboard and start wearing them. And then eventually I just started buying more. And apparently there's heaps of, us 30-year-olds who've started a family. They want to get rid of these jerseys. So I ended up buying like 70 jerseys, man, for like $150 here in Australia, man. It was just like free jerseys, man. So now I've got like 70, 80 jerseys or something like this. I've got shit done.
I thought I had a bad rugby jersey addiction, and I'd say I probably have like 20 jerseys at home, but 70 basketball jerseys is serious collecting.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's basically got a whole cupboard full of them now, man.
And so, Ivan, like the main thing you're known for, besides like what I definitely refer to as like a stoic mindset with regard to your training, is the squat every day. So from the start, were you like first day going to the gym, I'm going to do this every day, or did it kind of morph into something?
It morphed. Like basically, I'm not an expert in the field, man. Basically, it's a learning experience. Basically, leading up to the start of the Squat Everyday program, it was basically, I think, 6 to 9 months that I didn't squat at all. I kept running into this TFL pain, like right side hip pain. It kept killing me. And I remember the day I kind of got upset, frustrated, and I said, the hell with squatting. I can't deal with this pain anymore. I was trying all these different things. Nothing was working. And it was just, I was running out of options. So I just said, look, I'm going to give squatting a rest. And I'll just start pulling a lot. Start deadlifting, RDLs, block pulls, all that stuff. And within like a week or two, the pain disappeared. And I just kept pulling and pulling for about 6 months or something. And then eventually the place where we're living at, we decided to build a shed in the backyard. And when that was completed, I just went, man, I'm so keen for squatting every day. I've got a space now in my shed. And I just, even the first day I started squatting, like day one, it wasn't a plan to squat every day for 600 days or whatever. I just squatted that day. And then I thought, geez, I wouldn't mind squatting again tomorrow, as well. And that's kind of how it started. And then 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And it's just, I don't know. I haven't missed one yet.
You're currently on 500, is it 50 plus?
So today was 562, I think it was. Yeah, 562.
I think, like Fitz said, the most notable thing I think about your videos, and I think it's what keeps people coming back, because you're growing, you get more popular. I can remember seeing some of your videos last year, even 6 months, and you're kind of a couple thousand per video. Now you're in the tens of thousands per videos, which is, it's great to see that some people have so much interest in squatting, and that kind of. But I think it's your musings every day on every single video for the last 550 days. Yeah, that keeps people engaged with you, because it's really honest, it's really authentic. Like you say, you don't do much editing. You just kind of monologue over your training. Do you think about that stuff while you're training, or is it reflecting back? How does that kind of thought process happen?
It's basically when I train, I might have a few ideas what I want to say, but my mind is always racing, man. Like I think the work that I do, like in the emergency department, like you bump into patients, unfortunate events all the time, and that kind of stays with you. Actually, my mate said to me, you're basically doing a journal through these videos. You're just basically kind of outletting. And I thought that's probably the best way kind of to describe it. So on one side, like I've got constant thinking about how to improve my squat, how to get to 300 kilos, right? I don't know if that's possible, and on the other side, I'm kind of dealing with, some of these stresses, I guess, from work. And then they just kind of roll into one, and I just kind of let it rip, when I turn on the camera, whatever's kind of in my mind at the time. And it's not pre-planned or anything. Like there's no script, there's nothing. It's just, I just basically turn the camera on, the voiceover, and just let it rip, basically.
And do you find that helps? Like, do you think since you started getting more and more into that, and the monologues are kind of more, so one thing I noticed, as I was watching the videos recently, I was thinking, like, are you a writer of some sort? Because they seem to be more involved and kind of more planned out, even though it's probably just you thinking about it more. Do you think since you started doing the kind of more involved process that it's helped you deal with like stress of training, or do you enjoy it more?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like it's just a natural kind of evolution of how everything happened. I definitely, like, I've never kept a journal in my life. Like I've never written anything. I'm not a writer. I'm not really all that academic. Like I finished nursing school to specialize in ED, and that's basically the extent of my education. So I've never done any creative writing or anything like this. But it was just an evolutionary kind of process. I don't know, I made one video talking about weightlifting, and then I thought, well, weightlifting is really kind of, you know, life is kind of like weightlifting. It's heaps of struggles, heaps of fires put out every day, you know, and how do you process all that stuff? And I thought, you know, the stuff that I see in ED and how people deal with, you know, chronic injuries and terminal illness, like if you could get somebody, you know, out of bed that's kind of, you know, has a terminal illness just to walk around the ward, you know, what problem have you got? Just, you know, do a 95, you know, single. Like, what are we talking about, man? This guy's like, you know, has a lot more to kind of push through than you. And so I take that kind of mentality, and I just feel like I want to run through brick walls when I'm in the garage.
How do you define balancing the, you know, the demands of night shifts? We've both done kind of night work before, and training usually, you know, even living is harder. It's like you're in a harder setting default without even trying to push your training to the limits. How do you find dealing with that? And actually, do you have any advice for people as well? Because we get that a lot, you know, balancing demanding work, and it's great to hear from different people in different situations.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind is I don't drink coffee. I don't drink coffee. I used to kind of drink coffee on some of the nights that I kind of struggled with, but I think coffee kind of plays with your endocrine system a little bit too much, like another cog in the system that you have to balance out, and like, you know, half-lives and whatever. What I basically do is, and squat every day kind of fits into this really well, because you squat every day, you can auto-regulate your training really well. So say I've had 4 or 5 days off and I'm going into a, you know, first night shift. I just basically push myself real hard that morning, exhaust myself so I can then fall asleep kind of like at 1 or 2 p.m. and have like a 3-hour kind of nap or whatever. And without that training, I don't know if I'll be able to fall asleep, you know, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But if I just hammer myself in the gym, have a big meal, drop that blood pressure, and then I kind of sleep for 3 hours, and that kind of sets me off in the right kind of, in the right path kind of for the night shifts. But in terms of how do you kind of deal with nights, there's no real secret, man. It's just about getting enough rest and stay away from the stimulants, man. I know a lot of people that I work with, they drink buckets of coffee, man. It's like, I don't know, man. I just basically use fatigue as a as something that kind of makes you fall asleep. And I've never really had a problem with sleep. Like, you know, I can fall asleep all the time. I don't know whether that's a result of the squat every day, or maybe I'm just chronically fatigued because of all this squatting. But I guess that's just, I don't know. For people that don't train, I guess I don't know what I would tell these people. But if you're training, just kind of auto-regulate your training to make you go to sleep, you know, during the day, basically.
That kind of, is nutrition something you pay attention to? Is it something you kind of focusing on, or is it just something you kind of, you know, you let simmer and just kind of whatever happens?
Yeah, so nutrition kind of was a big point in my life probably 4 or 5 years ago. Looked into it, tried, you know, to be vegetarian for 3 months, although that was a silly experience because I basically just saw that documentary, Forks Over Knives or whatever it was. And that thing freaked me out, and I just basically quit eating meat from that day, man, for 3 months. So it wasn't an intelligent kind of way of, you know, going about being a vegetarian. I just basically, you know, normal meal, kick out the meat and eat whatever's left. And that's not really a nutritious meal. So nowadays, I kind of just think balance is key, man. Like, I think every food group is important. I don't think any extreme kind of diet is something that is good. I mean, you know, you can be a vegan, but I think you need a lot of knowledge about food if you're going to be a vegan. You can't just, you know, start being a vegan and, you know, think about, you know, I'm going to eat until I'm full. You kind of think about how to meet all your requirements. So for me, I just kind of have a balanced, well-balanced diet. I know everyone says, you know, eat a well-balanced diet. What does that really mean? I just kind of make sure I get plenty of each group, essentially. I don't really give it that much thought other than that.
So Ivan, you like have really well-balanced aspects in everything outside of training. So then with your mindset towards training, when you're squatting every day, and you talked about auto-regulation earlier, how do you kind of handle that, or how do you bring that balance into a training environment where you, like, it can be very, very easily imbalanced or kind of be pushed too hard?
Yeah, oh man. It's funny because, you know, the Bulgarian method, squatting every day is very much extreme. It's the furthest thing away from being a balanced program, right? I think for me, it's just, I've made a lot of mistakes, man. Like I've made mistakes, and that's probably what led to the hip pain, really. I remember a time where I thought I'm gonna, fail every lift. I'm like, John Bro style. Like I'm gonna keep pushing every single day until I fail. Well, I got hip pain from that. So that's what I do. But it's just, I don't know. I've made mistakes. I kind of know what my body's telling me. I know what the signs are. Like if something feels off in the warm up, I know that's a day not to push. It's basically, I do a warm up and I see how the body feels. If it feels good, I'll push. If it doesn't, I back off. So it's like I never come in with an expectation I'm going to hit, 80 for 5x5. I just kind of come in. I'm like, okay, I've had a night shift. I haven't eaten 16 hours. We had a bad resus last night, so probably cortisol through the roof. Like, if I put in a big session here, I'm screwed. So I just kind of say, okay, let's have an easier session. And this is kind of where it gets tricky as well, because your mind is an enemy as well, man. Your mind can kind of give you that fog. Sometimes I have office days and I sit there for 8 hours and I come home, I feel like I've been digging in a trench for 8 hours, which is not the case, right? So I think it comes with experience, how to deal with workload and fatigue management, really.
And in your program overall, like, so when you're looking at a month or when you're looking at a week, what are you trying to, so do you tend to take, I'm just going to take this 1 week at a time, and maybe by the end of this week, I'll have done X for 3x3 or whatever it is? Or do you tend to look at, okay, by the end of the summer or by 6 months time, what are your kind of timescales?
Yeah, so that's kind of been a trick for the last 6 months. Like maybe for the last 2 months, I've kind of been completely pain free from that hip. But before that, man, so much frustration, man. Like I was showing my mate, the logbook that I just finished recently. Basically for 3 years, I would write, okay, these are the goals for this year. And not a single year did I meet those goals. Now, I don't know whether that's a foolish man thinking that I'm going to be a gold medalist by the end of the summer or whatever. Maybe these goals were just too extreme. But the TFL pain just kept throwing the spanner into the works. And so I would say, okay, this month I'm going to focus on volume. I'm going to try and push the 20 reps, sets. And then, I'll get to like the third or fourth week or the third or fourth day, and I'll get the pain. So then I would auto-regulate it back again. And so it's kind of like spinning your wheels constantly. The progress has been really frustrating. I think it's just putting out fires, man. But generally what I like to do is, I kind of get influenced all the time. Like it's a constant kind of learning process. Like I don't have even a budget behind me to tell me what's up, so I'm constantly learning. I actually watch you guys. I learn from you guys. I learn from everywhere. So then I hear something. I'm like, man, that makes a lot of sense, man. Maybe I should put something like that into the mix. And then it's always kind of like an oscillating thing where I reckon volume is really good. And then I'm like, oh man, I got to specialize into hitting some, proper singles. But I think for the most part, I try to kind of increase my work capacity. That's kind of where I'm headed. I think if you can tolerate more work, you can basically survive longer sessions and harder sessions. So I'm pushing volume, but at the same time, being a nurse in ED and the shift work, man, like last month has been a shocker. I've had like 9 nights and they're 12-hour shifts. And so basically for the last 3 weeks, man, like I don't even know, like I might as well just freaking stop the Sweat Everyday program, because it's just like some of those days you come in and just tick a box, man. Like there's nothing coming out of this, man. It's a mental thing. I'm here just to alleviate some of the stress. So it's hard.
So that kind of, I think most people will be thinking of this situation. And you've mentioned one of your recent videos, but I feel like the inevitable thought process is the use of performance-enhancing drugs. And obviously you have a very high goal for your squat, especially at your body weight. Is it something you think you'll ever do? Is there reasons you definitely won't ever do it? Do you want to?
Yeah. So performance enhancing, I mean, if you're serious about sports in general, and you want to kind of excel, sooner or later you're going to bump into some of these thoughts and some of these people that that are doing these type of things. For me, man, like I gave up basketball, and the first thought was, how do I keep moving? How do I keep healthy? That was the first thought. Like, I don't want to get fat at 25, so let's go to the gym and put that time that I put into basketball into the gym so I can stay fit. So for me, health is always number one. And I know you can do performance enhancing drugs, correctly, and you can kind of be smart about it. But honestly, like, I don't think it's worth the trouble. Like, through ED, through the experience of like 11 years of ED nursing, I've seen I've seen fair few fellas come in absolutely gutted from performance enhancing drugs, man. Like, I always tell this story, man. There was a 23-year-old that basically never got off train for like 3 years, never cycled anything. He was just on train for 3 years.
Fuck.
And his ejection fraction of the heart was basically 15%. Usually your ejection fraction of the main ventricle in the heart is around 60 to 70%. His was ejecting 15% of the volume of that ventricle. So he was basically fried. He was on fluid tablets. He was on blood pressure tablets. And I mean, that's a numbskull, right? That's an idiot. So that's not a reason not to do steroids, but the potential is always there. Like, unless you've got a whole crew behind you, scientists who really understand biochem. I don't know. I think too many of these dudes are just doing it out of the backyard, and the repercussions are very bad. So for me, I will never even think about going into that. I mean, I'm 32. Why would I do it? Like, I don't think I'm ever going to set a world record in anything. That truck has kind of gone by me. So now, like, what is it, just for YouTube? Like, come on, man. I don't see it. Health is number one, basically. That's what's in my mind.
Realistically, you're probably setting a world record as we speak in terms of most days in a row squatting.
Has to be.
Like, I don't think there's a lot of other people who've done a huge amount more than that. So the goal you spoke about earlier, like 300 kilo back squat, obviously 2 out of 3 people on this call want a 200 or a 300 kilo back squat. But what are the other goals? So is there, I know you were saying you don't concentrate on the press as much anymore, but are there like interim goals? Are you looking to do something with your pull? Or do you have like higher capacity squat goals?
Yeah, so like in my bio in YouTube, like when I first started it, I wrote something along the lines of 300 kilo squat, deadlift, and a 180 bench press. That was kind of like 2 years ago. Ivan's thinking that's all, rigid as possible, the fucking gorilla walking about. But I don't think it's possible in a natural human being, at least for me. I don't know, maybe it's possible, but I feel like every time I put bench press and squat together, everything stalls. So if you're gonna push one thing, I think it's easier to achieve a big squat and not worry about anything else. Just put all your resources into that, and you might have the best opportunity to get the 300 kilo squat. And then obviously the deadlift is kind of like closely related kind of movement. Maybe there's some sort of carryover between the two. But the bench press, I feel like the bench press needs its own kind of like, recovery, and squatting every day and recovering from that is hard enough. And then if I have sore chest and traps and back and lats and I'm just freaking inflamed all over, it's really hard to kind of recover from that. So yeah, ideally I would like a 300, 180, but I just don't know if that's possible. If the squatting was kind of going a little bit better, if I was kind of progressing a little bit better, maybe I would have kind of tucked the bench press into it as well. But because I've kind of had struggles with the squat, kind of dealing with that hip pain and all the issues, I've kind of just gone, okay, let's just get one thing right. Let's just get this squat going. And then if everything kind of starts going in the right direction, I will, plug in some other stuff.
You actually touched on something quite interesting there. Is there anything you do in particular for recovery besides sleep and nutrition? Is there anything you feel that helps you? Because obviously, because you squatted every day for the last 500 odd days, is there anything you've done that you've noticed that has a noticeable effect if you do consistently enough for your recovery after sessions, other than the obvious sleep and nutrition? Yeah.
I think the only other thing that I've kind of played with consistently is cold showers. Cold showers, I don't know whether it's a psychogenic thing or whether it actually has some sort of metabolic kind of effects, but I don't know what it is, man. Like cold showers, even if I jump into a cold pool, I just feel like, I don't know, I feel better. I don't know. It feels like it's very hard to kind of gauge and put empirical kind of like, thoughts into it. But I feel like cold treatments do something. I don't know how and what the mechanism behind that is, but I just feel like inflammation kind of settles down and I wake up fresher the following day. It seems like, every time I kind of do it, it's hard. It's hard now because it's winter and I've kind of had 2 weeks of being sick, the family's sick, the kids are sick. So I want to jump into the pool and smack the immune system, but that's kind of on and off. But that's pretty much the only thing that I would say that I've played with.
It's interesting you say about like psychological things that are happening with cold water. Like so people always talk about like resilience. When you look at you and when you look at what you're doing, obviously resilience has to be like both a state you currently live in and a trait that you probably have innately. And cold water immersion is one of the kind of main intervention type pieces you could do to like build resilience. So when they have like soldier groups, or when they have people recovering from things and they need to make them more resilient, cold water immersion is used a lot. Like, is there other things, or can you think back to like crazy things you used to do when you played basketball that you think kind of led to this mindset of like, I can keep going?
Yeah. Oh man. I don't know, man. Like when I was growing up playing basketball, there was definitely exposures to like people who I played with and people I've kind of seen. I've always kind of had a kind of I've gravitated towards people who are just like mentally just strong. You know, guys who are just forget about pain. There's a guy at work, man, that I work with, a security guard. Dude's in his 50s, and he can still do 100 push-ups, me, just one set, bang him out. And he's got a beer garden, whatever, doesn't look like he trains. I was actually talking to him about, mental strength and whatever, and I said to him, like, what do you do when it starts burning, man? Like, it's painful, like you can't push anymore. And Barry's he's a hard man. Like that bloke he's been through some tough stuff. And he basically said, just don't worry about it. Just keep going. Just keep going. I think our generation, man, is soft. I don't know. We're getting softer. But basically, man, like I came to Australia when I was 10, came from a civil war in Yugoslavia. So, all of my upbringing, I hear stories of like, very, very bad experiences from people. And so I've always kind of thought to myself, man, what have we got to worry about, man? Like you're running up a hill and you got a bit of, burning in your legs or whatever, but you're well fed, you've got shelter and all that stuff. So I kind of always kind of had the exposure of hearing other people's kind of bad stories and experiences. And I always think, especially working in ED, man, like you see all sorts of stuff, man. You see real struggle, and that kind of always reminds me every day. I've been working there for 11 years. And so you think, oh man, I've had a really bad leg there. I did 10 by 10 at 60%. Oh man, I'm so sore. Then you watch some guys got no limbs, it's all perspective. It's all mental. It's all that. So I think that my career has had a lot of impact to me and my mentality of what's perceived as hard, because pain is a subjective thing, right? What you think might be painful, somebody else is like, yeah, that's cool. I'll live with that every day, So it's all about how your perspective and what you think about on a daily basis. Like if you're thinking about what's happening in the world and Middle East and some of these third world countries, then you're like, man, I've got nothing to complain about. So I always kind of try and kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture. So I kind of work harder in whatever I'm kind of doing.
Do you find having kids motivates you a little bit more? Are they old enough to kind of observe you training? Do you feel like you're setting an example for them? And also, just wondering as well, how do you feel you balance that with having kids, obviously, and raising a family relationship? Because obviously, a lot of people, not people listening to this, but lots of people do make excuses for training. They're like, oh, I can't have kids, or I work 9 to 5 or whatever. How do you find out that whole dynamic?
Yeah, I used to hear it all the time, man. I used to hear it all the time. Oh, Ivan, man, you're doing all these weights and training all the time. You wait until you have kids. You're going to grow a beer garden. You're going to let yourself go. And so I've been hearing it for a while. And then when I had the kids, the first one was obviously a bigger shock than the second one. But, man, there's plenty of time in the day, man. Like you can make time. I think a lot of time is just basically wasted from basically 7, 8 p.m. onwards. We just sit around on social media. The kids go to sleep at 7 o'clock. So then we just have like 3-4 hours to ourselves, just wasting time. If you go to bed when they go to bed and you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they're still sleeping, you got a 3-hour window, you can just bang out the sets in the gym, So it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. You just need to, like, if you really, really want something, man, guys are talking about, I don't have enough time, but they've got plenty of time to watch movies and eat ice cream and play video games, man. Video games is a big thing for me. Like basically ever since I started squatting every day, my video games has completely kind of disappeared. Like, you just prioritize everything, But I think having kids has kind of really focused me. I've kind of talked about work or whatever, but I think kids give you this constant kind of pressure. Because a year for them is like incredible kind of transformations and development. A year for me, I've gone from 200 to 205. You know what I mean? I put 5 freaking kilos in 1 year, and this guy's already like walking around and talking and doing stuff. You know, so I'm always kind of thinking in a couple more years' time, he might be, you know, conscious and he might want to see me squat and see me progress. So I'm kind of always kind of thinking about, I want to be a really good example for them. I want them to be surrounded by weights and sports. I think that'll be a really cool thing. And I would love to be that sports dad, taking them to soccer training, rugby training, basketball training. I would love that. So, and I don't think that's doable if you just force them into it. They just kind of need to be like, oh, what's dad doing? Oh, let me check him out over there. Instead of just grabbing him and be like, watch dad kind of train. So I've always kind of, actually I grew up like that. My dad was a real sports person as well. So that's kind of why I kind of got into it. So if I can just, you know, be in the vicinity and doing my thing, and they might kind of come along, and then all of a sudden my kids are training and I'm in heaven, you know, and I'm laughing. And
so obviously you're like what some people might refer to as like a hard bastard. You're well able to keep going. Obviously, like your situation has meant that that's kind of formed you into this hard bastard. It's oftentimes like you'll hear Mike Tyson talking about like his kids or his son and being like, you're not going to be a boxer. You like, what happens if you come up against someone like me? Like, can you think of anything that's going to happen in your kid's life that's going to make it in any way kind of as resilient as you? Or are you even starting to plan or think about that yet?
Yeah, I think about it often, actually, man. You know, when I was 10 years old, we came to Australia as refugees, man. We didn't have a PlayStation. We didn't have anything, man. You know, we caught the bus to get around. And, you know, when he's 10 years old, he's going to be mint. You know, he's going to be living in a nice house. You know, he's going to have a car when he's 18. You know what I mean? Like, so for him, it's always going to be a different story because he's going to have a lot more kind of around, a lot more resources. So it's definitely really, really hard or harder to kind of replicate my story or even like replicate my dad's story, who actually was in war and did all of that. So it's kind of, as your socioeconomic standing improves, it becomes more and more kind of difficult to have some of these hard learned lessons. But you can do some stuff. You know, you can, you know, be a bit harder on them. You know, limit some of the things that they have, and constantly remind them of the stories. You know, where they've come from, and you know, the past. And this is where I think, you know, when he's a bit more older, I think learning history, understanding, you know, how this world came to be, understanding the hardship that some people go through. I think history is underrated, man. I think if we all knew history and what 100 years ago looked like to what it is now. I mean, I'm talking to you guys are on the other side of the globe, you know, having a proper chat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think times are changing, but I don't know. We'll see how he goes. I think sports is crucial because sports kind of gives you that pseudo hardship, you know. It gives you that ability to kind of struggle, to fight, to learn about camaraderie. So I think sports is critical. I've always thought that sports kind of teach you life lessons. It's kind of like, you know, we're talking about weightlifting. You know, when you got the bar on your back and you've done your, you know, 10th rep and you want to get to 20 and your legs are like this, you know, you got to talk to yourself something. You got to tell yourself something, man. There's got to be some sort of self-talk to be like, all right, man. I don't know if you're into Buddha or Muhammad or Jesus, but there's some sort of chats being had. So I think hardship. I always talk about comfort, man. Comfort is the disease. I always talk about this. People think I'm crazy, but I always say to people, every single day you wake up, you need to plan when in the day you're going to have some serious discomfort. Because we drive cars now, you can hit a button from now, the steering wheel is going to be warm, the seat's going to be warm, the gear knob is going to be warm, it's going to be mint 25 degrees. So that's not a hardship. You're not going to go walking across a hill to get to school. So you need to do something. I think that's why training is really good, because you can just be like, all right, at 6 p.m. tonight, I'm going to roar. It's going to be uncomfortable. And then all of your scale between your endorphins and cortisol, everything gets rescaled. You understand what's what. But if you go from high to another high to another high, you're shooting meth through your vein. All of a sudden you realize, well, there's nothing else going up. What do I do now? You know, so I think you need to balance it out, basically.
I think, you know, that's interesting. We were talking about video games yesterday as well, and one of our friends, and I used to love playing video games. Like, I was really, like, it was genuine, something I thoroughly enjoyed doing. And I still would at the moment, but I think maybe this year I've played 0 hours of video games. Last year I probably played maybe 10 hours total. The year before that was probably like 20. Like, it's just funny. It's not that you know, some people demonize games and they're like, oh, you're just lazy playing games, but you kind of understand why people do play them, because if you have no direction or no kind of place to exert yourself, or no kind of hardship, I suppose, in your real life. Now, obviously, some people are using it to escape, which is a different scenario entirely. But if you're in a situation where everything's pretty rosy in comparison to what it could be, you know, it's funny how video games are something that you want to do them, but you just, once you get the priorities, it's hard to kind of give, you know, because if you want to play video games, it's like 3 hours is like a minimum enjoyable session realistically for most people.
Exactly.
And you know, you see people playing games and they've like put it's like 500 hours a year into one video game, you know. That's like, there's a certain place for enjoyment and escapism. I think that's definitely very important, but then there's also a point where you're just not paying attention to your real life, where you're avoiding issues and stuff, you know. And I do think as much as I would love to play them, it's just something you can't realistically do. Once you weigh up everything else, it's very hard to justify putting like several hours into the weekend, or, you know, if you're free time to a long gaming session. Onto, I suppose, a less kind of existential topic. Where do you see the squad every day going? Do you have a destination in mind? Are you just going to see what happens and take it as it comes? Like, do you have like 10 years time, I want to be on 3,000 squad, like YouTube series?
Man. Honestly, man, this whole thing came about just out of nothing, really. There was no plan to it. I just kind of rolled with the punches. The craziest thing of all, like, I look forward to it every single day. And some people have actually pointed this out, and I've kind of had these thoughts as well. I think this whole journey has kind of become not so much about the 300 kilo squat. It's just become as a release. It's my video game now. Sometimes I head over to the garage, man, and I tell my wife, look, I'm going to go over there and do a quick session. I'm there for like 3 hours. I grab the thing. I'll do some calf raises. I'll do a bit of this, a bit of that. It's like 3 hours. I haven't even started squatting. It's like 3 hours in. She's like, what are you doing, man? Like, we've got things to do. Well, I go in there, I explore, I think about muscles, I think about anatomy, I think about, is it the calves that are going to get my squat better? Is it this little muscle up here? Like, you know, I love it. I think from kind of the real life worries. And about the video games thing, I wanted to say as well, I've noticed in the last few years that when I'm more stressed, I have a more need for games.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Yeah, so when I have like a really stressful time, whatever is going on, I'm like, man, I just want to plug some game in and just get the hell out of here, man. I just want to bang out like 5 hour full immersion Skyrim, like, you know, just get my character from 1 to like 60, you know. And that's actually why I haven't bought any new games in the last 6-7 years, man. Because these games now are just getting to the point where it's going to end you up freaking divorced. You're going to have no kids. You're going to be on the street. All you're going to do is play video games, man.
Yeah.
But the squat everyday journey, like, it's more, to me, it's like more like a stress reliever now. It's more about the mental thing now. Like, I'm so productive because I'm thinking about this all the time. I don't waste time anymore. So maybe this is going to continue on to, like, I don't know, 3,000, like you said. Not sure. Really not sure where it's going to go. All I know is that I feel great. I feel mentally strong, and I feel like I've achieved something every single day. And that's a really cool feeling, man. When you feel like you've done something, you're moving in the right direction. Whereas, like, if I was to sit down and play video games for 3 hours and my kids are running around, I'm like, I'm the biggest kid here, man. I'm the one playing video games. So it's kind of like a negative feeling. Like, I would have 3 hours of video games and I love it, but then I turn it off and I feel like a piece of shit. You know.
Yeah.
Whereas if I you know, spend that time in the garage, I feel like I've done something. You know. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of overlay with the, you know, a lot of your subscribers and ours as well, and listen to the podcast. There's a lot of crossover, and I think there is a certain group of those who do kind of commit themselves a lot of time to gaming, and it's kind of unfortunate because I find great enjoyment in playing games, but it's hard to kind of verbalize in a way to people where you're like, you might be holding yourself back. You know, you might not even be putting yourself in a negative place. You just might be ending up net neutral. So very likely they're holding down a job, no problem. And they might have a relationship and it's all rosy. But they're also, you know, there's no kind of growth there, you know, because if you put 15 hours a week into that, that's, you know, 15 hours you could have been doing something else, you know, like there was a point where for like last 3 years, I was working like probably, it was taking up about 55 hours a week of work, and then I was training for like 20 hours a week, and obviously relationship and, you know, paying for a house and stuff. There was no room
Yeah.
for gaming, you know. But if I'd have taken all the hours from gaming from Sika strength, you know, just put it to gaming, we wouldn't be sitting here, you know. We wouldn't be talking to you.
Oh, that's it.
You know, and it's not a negative thing, and I don't want anyone listening to think about that, but it's certainly a thing of you're just missing out on other things you could be doing, like you're saying, in the gym. Not to rag on video games, and people do this with all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like we'll go out from like October to like January looking for deer and birds and stuff to shoot. So I know there's like there's a lot of different things, and obviously there's different consequences to that. But it's definitely something I think bear thinking about to some people listening to this. It's funny how that came up, but even though we talked about it yesterday.
I just wanted to say, like, you know, even though I don't play video games, I want to play video games.
Yeah.
Like me and my mates, like, you know, the whole crew, we just like, man, we've all got kids now. We're like, man, I just want one weekend just to like bang out like 25 hours of these video games. Even when I'm doing sports, I'm like, man, I wish I could just, you know, play some video games, right? So it's always there. I always want to do it. Like, it's my childhood, man. I played a lot of video games as a kid, man. It's probably why I didn't do well at school. But man, it's always there. So like the people that are listening, it's like, man, I'm with you, man. You know, maybe it's like my circumstances have changed now because I've got a family and kids, and like you said, you pay for a mortgage. But if I didn't have kids, I'd probably be playing video games because, you know, I don't have to shower them. I don't have to worry about them. I look after them, you know. You can still kind of, you know, get your training in and do all of that. It's just, as you kind of get older, there's more and more things kind of like eating into your 24-hour cycle. And eventually it's like, you know, what's the reward from doing a said task?
It was funny. I was saying to you recently that some stressful stuff, but I was like, I'd really like to get back into gaming, you know, but it's not possible. Like, I just couldn't possibly commit to it, you know.
That's
not enough time.
Gaming for me is the one thing I've literally never played a PC game, but it's the thing on the shelf that I understand is like, it's like people looking at smoking being like, oh no, it's really addictive and you shouldn't start. And I've just in my head, like with my personality and just understanding how my brain works, I've just never allowed myself to go near it because I know for a fact, like I remember being a 14 or 15-year-old being like, wait, if this is what they say it is, then I'm never going to be able to go fishing or shooting again. Like, I literally never leave my room.
Yeah, it just takes you, man. Forget it.
Yeah.
Ivan, this has been great. It was a very good conversation, very interesting. I hope people will like this, and I hope it'll make them think about some stuff.
Absolutely.
We'll be watching with interest how the rest of your journey goes, and hopefully you get very close to 300, if not 200-300 at some point, which would be great to see.
Yeah. And that 180
I hope so as well.
Yeah, the bench.
Yeah. I was telling my mate that this was going to happen tonight, and I thought, man, I've been watching you guys for some time, and clearly you guys are on another level. Like, you guys are much better athletes than me, and you know, and now it's like I'm having a chat to you guys. It's like, it's really, really, really weird. It's like that thing. It's like whoever you see on TV, you're like, oh no, there's just another world. Like, that's not attainable. And now you, like, us three are sitting down and chatting. So I look kind of forward to it. As soon as you guys kind of messaged me on Insta, I thought, wow, man, I've made it.
No, you definitely haven't. Yeah. Thanks, Ivan.
We really appreciate your time as well. Like, we understand you're busy, so thanks very much for taking the hour to chat.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
No problem.
Brilliant. You're a gent. Thank you.